Hello, hello. Hi, everyone joining. Hello. We have got a super international audience today because we have a very international panel. So do say hi, check in. Where are you tuning in from, and what are you hoping to leave today with? How would you love to leave today thinking, acting, feeling? What would be fantastic for you to leave with? Hi, Brandon. Hello from Canada. Hi, Catherine.
Hi,
Hi, Iris.
everyone.
Hi,
Goodness,
Cambridge,
it's
South Africa.
how lovely to be back with you both. I always
Yes.
love these so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Wonderful to see you all.
Oh my
Amazing.
goodness.
Goodness me. I mean, a hugely international audience. Hi,
It's
Victoria. Some
amazing.
names I know well here. I'm sure Bonnie and Lucy are spotting lots of names they know too. Hi, guys. It's like being with
Going
friends.
too
It's
fast. I
lovely.
can't spot anybody. Hello. Good
Oh,
to
even
see you
Jersey's
all.
in the house. New Jersey and Kenya. I mean, it's like Dubai. It's all over the place. Thousands and thousands of miles. It's a miracle that we're here.
It really is. And how lucky and grateful am I to be here with you both. And we've got over 200 of you online already, and we're only 1 minute in. So amazing to have so many of you here live. We wish I was in person with you all, but this is the next best thing. Hi, Gillian from
Great.
Ireland.
Oh,
Ciao.
Carla.
Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Danielle. What would you love to leave today with? Let us know, because it's really lovely for us to know what you want most. Some of you have submitted amazing questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out to share your brilliant questions with us. And do let us know what you want from today. Incredible. What an incredible audience we have. Wonderful tips for 2024. Inspired, we can do that.
We'll do our best.
Cleaning tips. You're being asked for cleaning tips, ladies. I don't know when that's new.
Cleaning tips.
Cleaning tips.
Oh, new trends, how they can excel at their role, looking for a new job, time management, email, forecast on the job market for 2024. Oh, toxic colleagues saying no to self-doubt. Blimey, Perth, Olga, you're up early or late, one or the other. Unless that's Perth in Scotland, of course, which it could be.
Hi, Yana. Oh my goodness.
Very late, she says,
Argentina
Olga.
is on my bucket list for sure. I want to go to Argentina.
I'm amazed there's anywhere you haven't been.
Oh gosh, plenty. Plenty still on my bucket list. I'm excited.
Amazing.
So amazing, Lucy. It's so fun to. Has your
I'm
team
such a
created one of
brat.
those maps with the pins in it about where you've been?
Oh yeah, where's Wally or where's Waldo? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm such a brat. Last year I went nowhere new and I was just like, meh. It was still 12 countries and 38 cities, but I was just like, oh, I'd like to go somewhere new.
Oh, thank you, Catherine, reading the book. I mean, between Lucy and me, you've got lots to read, and all of us, and it's.
I mean, there's one thing I have not done is write a book. So that is all Lucy B and Bonnie's. And if you haven't read those two books, and Raf, if you can put the link to Bonnie and Lucy's books in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm sure you've all already bought your copies, but if for those of you that haven't, they really are fantastic, fantastic reads, both of them. Oh, hello, Kellyanne. Hi. Hi, how are you? I haven't spoken to you for ages. Ages and ages. How you doing?
Yes, we're waiting on Lucy's book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got dyslexia, so writing is one of those things that I find really intimidating.
Maybe just speak it and get somebody to ghostwrite it for you.
That's the trick. That's the trick.
You do a heck of a job on LinkedIn, Lucy C. I loved your post about that single mom, the scheduling.
That came from that we placed her. We've just placed her.
Wow. Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Well done.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, people are looking for jobs on this call today. Feel free to put in the chat. Like I saw someone who's looking for work. Say what city you're in, because we've got this is a brilliant work network right here. So let's get to work here. That's great news, Lucy C, that you placed her.
Really cool.
So
Really
thrilled.
cool.
The power of
Yes.
social media, man. That's how it happened? That
Mm.
through the post?
Yeah.
Well done. That's a lesson right there.
Yeah, yeah. We had 4 women. They were all women, and that's unsurprisingly in exactly the same boat. And we've got 2 on interview and 1 that's been placed. So it was just amazingly powerful. And having not been able to get an interview to that was quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And you get very nervous as a recruiter about speaking out about these things because you're worried about alienating clients, of course. But in the end, you have to say what you feel, because otherwise nothing changes.
It's so hit a nerve, that post, I can't tell you. Brilliant, brilliant post.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we are probably about ready to start. And I think that I'm quite sure you know exactly who we all are. I think for me, what's amazing about the 3 of us coming together is we all have different perspectives, different life experience, but we've all spent our lives pretty much submerged in the administrative profession. Whether you're Bonnie, that's supported an Oscar-winning actress as an EA, whether you're Lucy, that's probably been the most preeminent publisher and magazine, what would you call yourself? A magazine mogul in this sphere? I
Something
would
like
say
that,
so.
yes.
But probably 2 of the biggest game-changing individuals in the administrative profession that I'm certainly honoured to have in my circle. And I know, because I speak to you all the time, just how much of an impact both Lucy B and Bonnie has in terms of your professional competence, but also in terms of your activism, because we do need activism in this space, and allyship too. And I think both Bonnie and Lucy inspire all of us to both activism and allyship. And that is where change really comes from. And today our focus is on 2024. We are right at the start. And so just a little footnote for anybody that doesn't feel that they came out of the traps in 2024, sprinting, guns a-blazing, it doesn't matter. For many of us, it's still winter, and we are supposed to be wintering, which is to cozy up and retreat a little. We're not supposed to be out of the traps or guns a-blazing. Everyone's on their own path. Don't worry about what you have or haven't yet done in 2024. It's all about the micro shifts and the mini changes that lead to great results. So be kind to yourselves. And I'm going to be really interested to talk to both Lucy and Bonnie about their predictions for 2024. I'll share some of mine too, and things I think we need to be aware of. And I was delivering some training on Monday, and something came out of it that I thought was really important to share today, but I will do that in a little bit. So I think we'll kick off with some of your questions for sure, and I've got those on this screen here if you're wondering why I'm turning there. But I really want to talk about diversity, equity and inclusion. Before we got on the call today, the 3 of us were chatting about, a fascinating article that Bonnie had shared, some of the results from our own survey, and Lucy talking about the fact that actually it is now becoming a widely known issue that actually the exclusion of the administrative profession in career paths and training is a D&I issue. Thank goodness. We've been saying it for a while in between the 3 of us. But Bonnie, I was really interested to hear about your take on D&I in 2024.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucy C. And that's how I differentiate between these amazing women. And Lucy C., may I just call you out that you have been so brilliant as an advocate for this profession. And so I know Lucy and I want to thank you so much as our collaborator, as, a person who cares so deeply about what we're doing here. And that's why we continue to get together. So thank you. The article in Fortune magazine this week, the headline is DEI Backlash Has Companies Quietly Changing Their Programs to Avoid Wave of Lawsuits Alleging Discrimination.
Oh, wow.
Let's begin with the idea that everyone on this call knows that this workplace in 2024 in January is messy. It's messy. and complicated, and it's all over the place. There's all kinds of conflict about, are we going back into the office? Or are we not going back into the office, and how much? There's a lot of conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, and then oftentimes companies add the B for belonging. We know that the data is clear that a more diverse group in an organization is a better one. It's a stronger one. It's a more creative and a more resourceful one. But the question is, how do we get there? And in the United States, there's been some major companies who have decided to scale back on their DE&I programming because the pendulum is being perceived as going the other way and discriminating against people, white people, So it's complicated and messy. Here's what I see. The DEI and B is also now extending to women and to, other groups. And we have ERG groups, the employee resource groups. The conflict I see happening and building in companies is that the staff want these programs. They yearn to get together at ERG groups. They want to be with the young professionals at their company, and they are very successful. And it's bumping up against leadership who are getting a pushback on these programs. So I think the main message I want to share is, more than ever, the staff needs to express your honest opinions to your leaders and HR. It's never been more important to speak up about how you are feeling about the importance, the impact of these kinds of programs. Is it clean and just black and white? No pun intended here? Absolutely not. But are they worth trying? I think the answer is yes. I know, Lucy, you had something to say about this, yeah?
Yeah,
Lucy B?
I mean, yes, indeed. I mean, I think it's so interesting because back after George Floyd, of course, we put in place a paper which was presented at the World Administrators Alliance, because I was concerned about the conferences that I went to where there was almost no representation of people of color, and I wanted to work out the reasons for that. So we took 16 of the top assistants in the world who were of color or from different ethnicities, and had them put together a paper which they presented, which because obviously as a white middle-class woman, it's not my place to do that, but I was very happy to have led that program. And out of that came a standing ovation, a virtual standing ovation, I think, from pretty much everybody in the profession, because really there needs to be more work done, particularly by us leaders in the profession, to make sure that we're being inclusive. But also there was an amazing article that came out of that from Simone White, who is the lead at GAIN, which is part of BlackRock's assistant network. It's their global internal assistant network. But she was talking about how the role of the assistant is very often excluded. And I am seeing more and more in businesses that they are coming to that realization. Bonnie, you talked about women having their own groups within businesses. Well, yes, but how often do the assistants get invited to that? And I don't think that it's because they're meaning to leave us out. I think it's just because it's always been that way. So we're needing to really wave the flag and say, hey, look, we want to be included in things that everybody else is included in. I'm going to put a link in the chat so that if anybody's interested, they can have a look at it. But when you get to a point where you're having discussions with organizations like the European Central Bank, who's saying they're raising it as an issue of exclusion, then it starts to get serious. And I think it's very interesting, because when you talk to HR departments about it from that point of view, all of a sudden they go, oh goodness, because they've never thought about it that way.
I couldn't agree more. And I think an action for me that comes out of that leads from what Bonnie said, which is we need to say what we need and what we feel. And in order that we can create safe spaces to do that, we need to come from the conversation as I'm okay, you're okay. And when we do that, everything shifts. And so to share with your HR or your line manager this really matters to me. I think it should matter to us and to you. And this is the game. This is how we all win. I mean, a rising tide lifts all ships, doesn't it? And the evolution of skills, of opportunity within our organizations benefits everybody. There is nobody that it doesn't benefit. So if we can approach conversations from, this is why this matters, so the feelings part, because our brain's like an elephant with a little rider, our rational piece is the tiny rider, our emotional brain is this great big elephant. And if we can get people's emotional brains on board, that's where the rational kicks in and change happens. So I think we just need to find ways of feeling through these challenges in a collaborative way, because cancel culture, unfortunately, has created a vacuum of silence. And so the people with the power say nothing because they are so terrified of getting it wrong. And as a result, we have this great big gap. So where you'll hear advocates for change, often at people that are at the very end of their career, because they've done their thing, they've got their badge, they're okay with putting themselves out there. But that leadership piece where we need the most activism is very quiet because they're worried.
Yeah.
What do you say?
True. One more comment about that. You know, for everybody on this call, if you're evaluating a company, either the one you're currently working with or one that you're considering, go to their website and go to the careers tab and go to the mission and vision statements on websites. I've been doing work with a company called Infineon. It's a global company, and I call them out because I have rarely seen a company do such a fantastic job of articulating what it means to work at their company, what the leadership stands for, what people can expect regarding DEI and B, and about their attitudes towards training. You know, I think, in my view, company leaders would do very well to improve the way they articulate on websites what it means to work at their company. And then that spans to LinkedIn business pages as well, you know, to really let's get clarity about this. In an environment where we're working remotely and in a hybrid way, we're not in rooms together as much anymore. So how are we getting this information? We're getting it through LinkedIn, we're getting it through websites. And honestly, I think the executive assistants of the world really play an important role in helping push this along, to reveal it to HR and to leadership, who are struggling mightily to figure out how we're going to move forward better in 2024.
And I think for everyone, go for it, Lucy.
No, I was just going to say, I have forever said that assistants build culture. It's really part of the role, I think, because you are the ones who operate right the way across businesses. So particularly, as you say, Bonnie, with them working from home, very, very important that you understand what your culture means and how you can buy into that. I'm very always astounded when I am teaching assistants and we start talking about what the brand values are and what the organization stands for. And I ask them what their mission statement is, for example, the number of assistants who have no clue about that. And that's not necessarily different from anybody else. I think businesses spend thousands and thousands on putting mission statements together and brand values together, but they're not so good at communicating that internally. And it can change entirely the way that a organization works if everybody understands what you're meant to stand for. So maybe go and look at those, maybe go and talk to your marketing department about what your mission statement is, and then work backwards from there.
I love that. And actually following on from that, one thing I'm going to ask our audience is, when was the last time you shared an article that is going to shift the needle? So ask yourself that. When was the last time I was on LinkedIn and I shared something about our industry that really matters in terms of the direction I want to see it going? And if it's been a while, go and share something, because people are watching trends. Everybody loves data. Everyone's interested in trends. And if all of us as a profession are starting to say, this is what we expect and this is what we need, then things will change, because the voice becomes louder and it becomes more and more difficult to ignore. So I would ask you to use LinkedIn as that opportunity. Something that Lucy just said really resonated with me. I was talking to a group of assistants who felt that, that what they did year in, year out was the same. That doesn't matter. I think it's evolving all the time, but let's say it is the same. Micro adjustments to how we deliver what we do is what matters. But having a sense of purpose, the why you do what you do, is so critical. So one of my tips for all of you in 2024 is to know why you do what you do and let those that you support know it. Because that way you start to align your own personal vision with that of the business. And equally at the same time, you create connection and opportunity, because once somebody knows the why behind you do what you do, they start to notice other opportunities that might enhance your fulfillment. And it opens up opportunities for conversation that you might not have had previously. And it also re-energizes us when we can come back to the why, when things are difficult and challenging. So let's hop to one of your questions. Let's hop to one of your questions. Now, one of the biggest areas that's come up a lot is around burnout, motivation, exhaustion. And I think particularly for assistants, because it has been a period where it's felt relentless since COVID, during and after, and the constant change we're working with. How do we specifically manage that burnout and re-energize? Bonnie, I'm going to ask you first.
Well, it really comes down to those 24 hours in a day, right? And I just spoke with an EA yesterday who has been working for 25 years. And so she well remembers going into the office 5 days a week. And now she is in a fully remote situation, working with her CEO executive. And she is, as much experience as we have in our careers, there is something that feels very new about right now. And it does to her. She's very disoriented. That all of a sudden she doesn't know how to manage her day. And it's a big deal. Anything new and it still feels new after, you do something for 25 years. And then the last 3 years, the pandemic threw everything into the air like a deck of cards. I really think it is about doing what assistants do really well, which is to just take a fresh look at those 24 hours every day and decide how are you using those hours? The pandemic proved that life can change like that. People get sick, people die, people move. So isn't it about deciding what's lacking? Are you not seeing your family enough? Are you not being with your kids enough? What is it that you want? It is not an unrealistic expectation, in my view, to have a job you absolutely love, where you get paid fairly, and that you are respected and acknowledged, and you have a life. You have whatever it is you want, whether that's a family, a dog, a plant, whatever it is. I think it's possible, but we're going to have to be the CEO of ourselves and decide for ourselves, and then communicate it to our leaders. Lucy C., you posted that thing about the single mom who was having trouble finding an employer who would work with her schedule. Well, more and more leaders are being receptive and responsive to what I refer to as no-fly zones, those places for ourselves, like, what? I have to work out 3 days a week, and that's a no-fly zone. And so let us have that conversation, which is kind of a new thing for staff to have that conversation with their employers. That's partly my take on it. What do y'all think?
I couldn't agree more with you, Bonnie. It's for us, we time box, and we encourage our assistants to time box. And that's because of Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law says that however much time you allocate yourself to do something is how long it will take. And you and I both know Hallie Warner and Adam Hergenrother, and I'm sure that most of the audience do as well, the authors of The Founder and Force Multiplier. Adam only works until 2 o'clock every day because he wants to go home and see his children. And when I asked him how he's done that, and by the way, he's a billionaire. It's taken him 10 years to get there, but he's a billionaire. And he said he works every day as if he's going on holiday tomorrow. So we started, because I'd seen an article in Harvard Business Review on time boxing, taking our calendars and putting into it absolutely everything. I have to tell you, one of the first things my assistant did for me is to put lunch in there, which was just wonderful, because I can quite often get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and go, I'm feeling slightly strange. Why am I feeling strange? Oh, It's 4 o'clock, that's why. And now I've only got an hour left of my day. Now lunch pops up and I go, hooray, lunch, let's go eat something. But everything is in there. My walk to work in the morning, breaks, my lunch, if I'm going out on date night with my husband, whatever it happens to be. But I set periods of time for the work that I need to do. The other thing that I will say is that I have seen a load of you putting Copilot there in the chat. And this is really symptomatic, I think, of the shift for the administrative professional in going from doing task-based reactive work into moving far more into the proactive and strategic work, which is really something I think we're going to see more and more as we move through 2024 and into 2025. Certainly, the work that we have done in the past, which has been us being told what to do as assistants and then reacting to that, is something that is going to go out the window, because Copilot and other AI is going to take over more and more of part of that role. But I think it's an opportunity. I think we're seeing AI as something that is a product rather than something that is a skill that we need to go and learn. And very much like the internet right at the beginning, where we also saw it as a product until we realized it was going to take over our lives completely in all sorts of different ways, some good and some bad. AI is that. So really, we need to get on board. It isn't AI that's going to take your job. It's somebody that really understands how to use AI that is probably going to take your job. So get out there, learn it, and it's going to mean that things like expenses and minutes, all those things you love doing, right? Not. Are going to disappear and free you up far more for having conversations with your executive around what their goals and their KPIs and what success looks like for them this year, and what they're trying to achieve can take place, and so you can add more value and take on greater responsibility, not more work, but more responsibility in areas that are more interesting.
I couldn't agree with you both more. And one of the, I think, ways that we shift how we operate as a profession is to make sure that on a Friday you have time for, yes, planning the work schedule for your execs for the following week, but what about yours? What are your priorities? What does great look like for you next week? But also, most importantly, what are your 3 non-negotiables for you in order that you can deliver next week? And those 3 will change all the time. Sometimes it's about movement. Sometimes it's about, having really rich nutrition. Sometimes it's about going to bed earlier. But what are your 3 non-negotiables? And I work on that basis every Friday. What are my non-negotiables next week in order that I can deliver the very best version of myself and the week as I see it? Because, of course, events come up all the time. And as assistants, that happens constantly. You are not in control of events, but you are in control of your reaction and the outcome. And if part of that reaction is shift changing and working with that change, but not abandoning your non-negotiables, burnout is much less likely as a result of that. And boundaries are incredibly empowering. Of course, responding to need is also important, but people respect people with boundaries. They really, really do. And they might not like them all the time, but they will respect you for them as long as they don't abandon the most important aspects of what matters to the company at one time. Okay, so, this is a great one, and this is coming up for me. What happens once I'm a senior EA, and where do I go next?
Oh, yes, loaded, isn't it? I think. And the problem with this is massive. I just finished just before Christmas doing 25 hours of one-to-one interviews with people who were senior assistants and talking to them about the things that they're finding most frustrating. And number one there is the fact that there seems to be a ceiling for assistants where they can't move from being an administrator unless they move into a totally different career, or the business doesn't have a pathway for them. So a lot of what we're doing this year is talking to executives and to HR departments about career pathways for assistants, and more we're talking to them about the fact that, yes, it's wonderful. Those of you that know the Global Skills Matrix, fantastic that you've got levels 1 to 5, so you could end up as a very, very senior EA, or even as a chief of staff if you go and get the qualifications. But really, we are encouraging businesses also to put in there pathways for administrative professionals that want to look at other options within the business later on. But I think really it needs to be about having competencies and clear skills and clear tasks for each role and understanding what excellence looks like. So it isn't necessarily getting promoted to a different job even. It's about understanding that at your, as an assistant, you have a choice. You can either go for absolute excellence at your level, or you can look at something else later on down the track.
Right. If I may, there's a trend right now called quiet hiring. And, you know, it is coming off of, in the United States, there happen to be a lot of jobs available for executive assistants, and there's some difficulty filling positions. There's a lot of movement around salaries, and Lucy C., you've observed that salaries are having to come up significantly in the United States. It used to be that assistants had to leave a company in order to advance and get more money and change their title and change their job description. Now that's not so. HR is discovering that there's a lot of homegrown talent right on the team, but we, and especially if we're talking about a profession that's still 95 to 97% female, we don't walk around saying, hey, I'm great at these things, but I'm also great at these other things that you might not know. You might be, you know, really terrific at onboarding. You might be really terrific in tech. You know, there's a lot of places. So my big message today about looking to the future is look at the needs, look at the gaps. Where's the gap in your company? And as I said earlier, it's never been more important for you to set up a meeting with HR and with your leader to discuss your ambitions. They matter. And actually, you might be the answer to a big problem in your company, because after all, you already know the culture, you're already integrated into the company. So it's a lot, frankly, it's a lot less expensive to upskill you and promote you and change your title and adjust your job description than it is to hire from outside the company. The thing is, this is a new idea, fairly new still to, you know, like, wow, it involves seeing yourself as a priority and that your career can take a new path, maybe not completely, but partially. And that's happening. Yeah, that's what I see happening.
I love that. And what I always advise anybody that's looking for a gear change or a shift change in career, that's currently at a senior, let's say currently supporting a CEO as an EA, is go out and find 5 job descriptions that really excite you. They might be in operations, they might be in projects, they might be in HR, they may be a chief of staff. What skills do they need? Number 1. Then go out and find opportunities to start that learning journey. Now, you might be in a position where you can't afford paid training, so pick a podcast or find a book. It doesn't matter, but what happens from that moment is then I say, go and pick a project internally where you can start using that skill. And you do it quietly. I'd like to take on this project. Yeah, these are the skills that I have. This is what I think the outcome's going to be. From there, you are noticed in terms of your competence in a new area. But we have to demonstrate a skill, and we have to demonstrate a commitment to learning. Nothing comes without doing the work to make the change happen. So those would be my advice in terms of making that change happen. I don't know what your thoughts are, Bonnie and Lucy.
Oh, yes, very much so. I'm always saying, okay, look at 3 different things and no more than 3 that you would like to take on, which are going to show how you add value or how you're taking on greater responsibility, and then do them immaculately. Because when you do them immaculately, what that means is that you're building trust. So then when you go back and you say, I'd really like to look at doing this thing or that thing, they're far more likely to say, yes, that's fine. I interviewed somebody who was the head of the Philharmonic Orchestra in Seattle, who was really getting quite cross because he was saying, I employ assistants to do a job, and that job is this, and they're immediately wanting to go and do this. And I was saying, well, yes, okay, but what you're not saying is that you don't want them doing this. What you're saying is that you want them to do this first. So if you're starting a job and you're employed to do this, do it. Do it absolutely immaculately. And then once you've done so, they're going to allow you to branch out to this and then to this and to this. And if you're using that as a way to build trust, eventually you'll get to a point where you can write your own job description.
Yes.
Yeah. And one more comment about that. Marlene said in the chat, I mean, the chat is going wild right now. I love the fact that there's a whole lot of teaching going on in the chat right now.
It's brilliant.
But Marlene said, I've asked for professional development and get blocked by my supervisor. Okay, that is happening in many companies. But here's the thing, Marlene, what I say to you and everybody on this call is if you know you need a certain workshop, a certain training, it is interesting to you, you're passionate about it, pay for it yourself. There are all kinds of ways to get training these days, unless it's putting food on your table, get training. What I see in the majority of companies, more and more leaders in HR are jumping on the bandwagon of understanding like, oh, to get talent acquisition, to have talented people apply to my company, to retain my people, we have to offer training. We have to. AI is such a huge one. How do we know not to, put in proprietary information into ChatGPT? And how do we know how to prompt? You're only going to know if you're trained. And that means internal networks where people are training one another and external trainings. Somebody in the chat said, what's the best AI training these days? There's a lot of panic among assistants, but you know who else is panicking? The executives. I get all these newsletters, Fortune and, Inc. and all this. Leaders don't know what to do about AI either. This generative AI, it's like a toddler. It's brand new. And they're people freaking out globally. So nobody's got all the answers right now. I think our move is to it's here. We'd better know about it and to teach one another and to, I go to YouTube and I've been watching videos on people who are really great at prompting. And somebody says, well, I don't put anything less than 600 characters in a prompt to get the really great result. Like, how do you know that unless somebody teaches you? So to me, one of my big messages today is training. Get training, insist on training. Many companies have training dollars that are now no longer only for the leadership and management. They are extending to administrative staff. Why? Because it's cheaper to train you internally than it is to bring somebody in from the outside. You know what? Because these decisions are being made about money, folks. This is about money.
I completely agree. And one of the most beautiful stories I heard recently, well, because I met her, was a receptionist that had emailed her chief executive. So she'd bypassed her line manager who'd said no because she wanted to progress from reception and she wanted some specific training to do so, which she'd identified. And she'd written this beautiful email, very businesslike, proposing a training budget for her development and why, and what she was going to commit to the company. And do you know what happened? It happened. So it's also who you're speaking to. And I would really encourage all of you to think about your career squad, because PAs spend a lot of time talking to other PAs and EAs. That's great, but who else are you talking to? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a sponsor in your company? Do you have a coach? What training suite do you go to? What networking groups are you a part of? Because that's how you build a career. And so we've got to look at, what does that squad look like? Who do I need to bring in? Who do I need to add in? What needs to look different? Because it's great we talk to each other, but we need a breadth and a richness of experience and focus. And mentorship is something that came up in a lot of your questions. And it is one of the most powerful squad members you can have if it's the right mentor for the right reasons. So Lucy, when you think about 2024, and you've just trained a group of executives, haven't you, in Salt Lake City? You've just been, and I'm sure everyone would love to know, or would have been a fly on the wall in those conversations. So talk to us, what was coming up? What matters to those executives most?
I think they thought it was going to be a sales pitch, because they sat there in the first place with their arms crossed and they were looking very uncomfortable indeed about the fact that they were going to have to spend an hour with somebody talking to them about assistance. And if you know me, you know it was never going to be that. But it's a really good tip actually for when you're asking for training as well. For anything you want actually as an admin is to make it about them and what's in it for them, not about what's in it for you. And that entire conversation that I had with them, I was determined that they would understand what having an administrative function that was properly trained and which was really understanding the business would do for them as executives. And more, I'm getting in front of executives and in front of HR departments to really have those conversations. And for about the first 10 minutes, they are very resistant. And you can see by their body language that they really don't think they should be there at all. And after that, the arms come down and the heads do that, and they start leaning in, literally, to the conversation. And by the time you get to the end of it, they are just saying, seriously, they can do that? We can do that? That's the difference. It was the moment I was showing them how they would probably have to answer only 30 emails a day, where one of them said to me, you know, if we can really do that, I might actually get out of the office on time for the first time in about 5 years. And they were really very stressed and burnt out themselves, I think. So seeing how an assistant can really add value when they're working properly in partnership is huge. And it was so exciting to have those conversations with them and to see the reactions that they had, because I honestly don't think that they're being nasty when they say no to training. They are just thinking about you as a resource rather than as a talent, and they're not understanding what you really can do for them if they utilize you properly. So we've got to get that across. And to your point on training, I get that you're saying there's YouTube and there's LinkedIn, and yes, if all else fails, go and do that. But it really should be administrative professional specific training, if possible, because it's very different in the way that it talks to you and in the advice it's giving you to how you can work with your executives. So ideally administrative professionals training, ideally make a proper business case, as Lucy said, write a document that's going to explain what the return on investment is going to be, what the impact's going to be on the bottom line, how you're going to add value, and very differently written from a point of view of what's in it for you, for your executive, and for the company, as opposed to what's in it for you, because that's what's going to get you the dollars that you need to go and do the training that you need.
Now, Bonnie, this one's for you. How do I get my executive to understand how to really utilize my full set of skills? And I think this is a question I certainly hear comes up all the time.
Right. And let me just say that the hybrid and remote workplace has made what I'm about to say even more challenging, because it requires a conversation. It's not one size fits all. I was talking to somebody, a leadership expert the other day, who's dreaming about an app to help leaders become better ones. I'm all for that. You know me, there's too much bullying. There's too much toxic work environments happening. How do we help leaders be better? Yeah, let's do that. We need their buy-in. We need, as Lucy B said, we need to reveal what's in it for them if they say yes to us. So for what I think the answer to your question is, it begins with a job description. It begins with every person on this call having an accurate, detailed, up to the minute job description, which outlines exactly what you do and how much time it's taking you to do it. And then alongside that document is your resume, because where it lists all the workshops you've taken. What is your knowledge base? Where are your skills? Where is your interest? If you just love PowerPoint and animation and making all those fun things happen, then your executive may not know that you're really great at it. So, as in general, as women, we're not great at saying, I'm awesome at that. So it's about providing the data. I'm a big fan of sticking with the facts. Stick with the data. Your job description is data. This is the facts about what you do and for whom. Your resume is fact-based. It's stick with the data. This is who I am, and these documents will help you have the conversation about your role and how you fit in. If you can find ways to save your executive time is money, that matters. And that has a number attached to it. If I save you 1 hour a week, you kind of ballpark what they make per hour, which is way more than what you make per hour. And that savings will more than pay for any training you're asking for. And we'll have that conversation about revealing to your executive more about who is this person who's really working for me? How often do we hear about assistants who feel under-leveraged and underutilized alongside the burnout? So it's messy. I said that earlier. It's messy, but we have to have this conversation with our leaders about who you are and what it is you would like to support him or her to do.
I am a big fan of outcome and impact. So when you're going for your reviews, take your job description in, talk about where you're excelling and what the outcome and impact is. So as a result of these tasks I'm delivering, this is the outcome for the business and this is the impact. And I'm a big fan of that on CVs as well, making sure that you're including your greatest achievements, the biggest impact you've had in roles. It should be a living, breathing document that brings your capability to life, and reviews are just the same. It shouldn't be a retrospective of, have I done this, have I done that? It should be, this is what I was tasked to do, and this is what it's meant for the business, and this is what it's meant for you too. Because that is a very powerful conversation then in terms of, where do I go next? What's next for me? How do I evolve this? How do I improve? How do I grow? And what would that mean for you? And that's a big question that often assistants don't ask, is if I was to up-level my skills in a certain area, let's say project management, what would that mean for you? What would that mean for the business? They will then start telling you their pain points, and you can then really deeply understand how you can evolve your skills and your importance in the business to really create a career path that perhaps they hadn't thought of themselves before. Lucy, what would you add to that?
What I would add to that, thank you, Lucy, very much. That makes total sense. But I think Global Skills Matrix is a really, really good add-in to that. And I'm encouraging assistants, not only if you have an executive already, to say to them, I saw this document being talked about on a webinar this week, and I just wondered where you thought I sit on this, because I think I'm a level 3. For example, for those of you that don't know Global Skills Matrix, it's a career framework for assistants globally that's been signed off by the heads of associations from 29 countries. And it's 5 levels of assistant. I mentioned it earlier. I'll put a link in the chat box. But the other thing is, if you get a new executive, I am encouraging you to maybe meet them off-site before you actually start, so that you're on mutual territory, and to sit down and say, this is the level at which I function. This is the level of support you can expect. These are the kind of things that you can expect me to do. And that way, it's a good starting point for the two of you to be talking about what kind of projects you'd like to get involved in, and how you like to manage calendar, and how you like to manage email, and the kind of other things, like, I don't know, whether you provide briefing documents, whether you want to sit in on leadership meetings. It's the start of a brand new relationship. And I love the thought of you guys meeting with them so that you're a partnership before they even step foot in the office, to express exactly what it is you're capable of and how you want to support them to become excellent also.
And I think it begins at the interview. Your partnership, your involvement in a company begins at evaluating the company and whether you even want to work there. And what we're discussing is absolutely a part of that conversation about your career growth. I think the candidates can do a better job at articulating what we envision for our careers, and hiring managers and leaders could do a whole lot better in articulating what it means to work at our company and what the path can look like. There is serious attention being paid to that. And I am optimistic about the future of our workplace because of that.
Oh, what a lovely thing to say. And so optimism is one of the things that changes our whole hormonal system. It's one of the best ways to keep yourself in balance, is to look for the glimmers, look for the glitter, and really look for the opportunity. I think, especially as a professions, sometimes what I hear is we can get stuck in a funk. It's not going to change. It doesn't change here. It's not going to be different. But we need to shift our language big time if we're going to make the changes that we know are essential to our profession. So we've got 10 minutes left. So for questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to as many of those as we can. I've got a whole long list here. I'm just trying to find what I think is going to be the most impactful for everybody. Okay. How do I demonstrate, and I'm going to ask you both this, how do I let my teams know what it is I'm delivering for them in terms of impact when I don't feel they notice me from one week to the next?
Oh, my
Lucy?
word. You know, I think very often it's about the way we see ourselves. And yes, I don't think they see us because traditionally, you know, the way that the assistant has been is that they sit outside of the core business and they are given things to do, hence the name assistant. We're assisting, we're not doing. But that isn't where it is anymore. And I think it starts with you. Do you really think about yourself as being somebody who works in the core business? And have you done the work to make sure that you are able to be part of conversations and that you do have things to add? Because let's make no mistake here, you are the people, and I've said this so many times before, that are process experts. Nobody else in the business does process and procedure quite like you do. So there is a real value to you being the new voice in the room, especially when it comes to those kind of conversations. But I also know that for many of you, you are really backward in coming forward because you're worried you're going to get the language wrong or that people are going to think you're getting above yourself. And that's a throwback to the way the role was seen in the past. So what I would say is that if you want to be noticed, if you want for people to treat you like everybody else and not to be shrinking into the background, the only person who can do that is you. And that's about going and doing the work on yourself to make sure that you're confident enough to step forward and put your hands up for things that are way outside of your comfort zone, to say, I have an opinion on that, to ask to be in leadership meetings so that you can hear where the business is going and you can see the bottlenecks and you start to become a core part of the team instead of somebody who's sitting there being given reactive tasks to do. I think it starts with you.
So I can thank you, Lucy B. That was brilliant. One little segue before I respond to that. A lot of people are saying they want this chat because there's gold in the chat. Those little 3 dots, the ellipsis at the bottom right of your screen in the chat, it says save chat. So you have the power to save the chat. You've got the autonomy. So here's what I'm thinking about how to show your value, because we don't want to go around bragging, tooting our own horn. It feels really odd to do. So Rosie put something in the chat that I think is really in line with what I'm thinking, is up weekly status reports. Stick with the facts. You know, and I'm a big fan of, say, on Thursday afternoon, I'm just picking that, you know, you lay out for your executives and your team, your colleagues, the A priorities, the B priorities, the C priorities that you see coming in the next week. And that will reveal what you're working on and where and what are the details of that. And, you know, some people were asking, well, how do I organize that on what software? You know, some people are using the to-do app. Some people are using smart sheets. You know, it really is very subjective about which one you use. It has to do with culture or whatever. But however you organize yourself, it is important that you communicate with your leaders and your team what you are seeing and doing as priorities. And that leads to the conversation. If you send it on Thursday afternoon, that gives you Friday to connect and say, you know, a leader gets to say, well, you know, what's on your A list really should be on the B list or the C list. And then something else has just happened. And, you know, and that, of course, I agree with Lucy B. If you need to be in that meeting to give you context about what's happening in the business, ask to be there. It's important that if you're going to be a strategic business partner, you cannot live it in a vacuum. You cannot get it isolated and lonely at home. It means putting on your webcam. It means being heard and raising your hand to say, I have a thought about that. May I share it? You know, and in this way, we will train our leaders and our teams that it is truly better to have us in the room than not in the room.
Yeah, Brené Brown says, make sure you contribute more than you complain. And I think that there is a lot of truth in that. And part of that contribution is saying what we need, because that is just as important to your employers, a lot more important to employers actually than sometimes we realize as employees. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. There are lots of great questions in the chat, in the Q&A box. One that does come up, and I do hear this, is how do you navigate old school EAs? And what I think that's meaning is individuals that perhaps have done something a certain way for a very long time, high on the food chain, but resistant to change, and stick to the hierarchy. So I guess that's a bottleneck that you were talking about in a funny kind of way, Lucy. How would you navigate that in an organization if that's preventing? Nobody needs to worry about the chat. Don't worry that you can't save it. I will share all the links. Nobody needs to worry. Well, one of the team here will, so no stress. Everyone take a breath. Don't worry about the chat. Lucy, what would you do about that?
I think, you know, when I'm training, I quite often have people who have got 20, 30 years of experience. And the last training I did, actually, I had one woman who we do that thing as trainers that we always do, which is to go around the table and to say, and what are you hoping to get out of the next couple of days? And this woman sat there and she said, I've been told to come and I've been told you're good, but we'll see. Oh God, okay, you know, but
No
they
pressure.
always end up being my very favorites because they don't know what they don't know. And really, I think we need to be constantly evolving to survive. Back in well, how old? I must have been about 14 or 15. My parents bought me a reel-to-reel tape recorder. Do you remember those? And it was cutting edge. And I used to record the top 40 and we dance in the living room with my friends. It was fabulous. But I think it's probably now in my attic. And then we got those Walkmans. And you remember the horrible headphones that we all pretended we couldn't hear everybody else's music? But we'd evolved, hadn't we, from one to the next. And now we have our iPhones or our Androids, whatever. And, you know, I have a friend's nephew who is 6, who's being taught coding at school. And the iPhone, he can take from me and he can beat my high score at any game that's on there. And I think, you know what? The assistants that are of 30 years experience who are saying I have nothing left to learn are very much like my reel-to-reel, and they'll probably end up in the attic because everything is changing so fast. Bonnie is very often saying things are changing so fast, and you know that's an amazing opportunity, but it's also scary because everything's changing so fast. Yeah. You can't be on your game in this profession unless you take it upon yourselves to evolve with everybody else.
Bonnie.
You know, it's part of the, you know, that old school belief that's around. It's about fear. It's about, you know, the fear of understanding what we don't know. The reality is that all the generations in our workplace have a purpose for each other. And ageism, skills and experience still matter. It really comes down to an attitude of wanting to keep learning and trying to push down the fear in favor of what is this opportunity? Like, who of us were talking about ChatGPT even a year ago? We weren't. So.
Yeah. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. So I think let's all close with perhaps something we want to leave everybody with. We'll survey everyone after this to ask you what you'd love for us to talk about most next, because I think that's going to be an interesting learning for the three of us. What's what are the hottest topics for you right now? But Lucy, what would you like to leave everyone with today?
I think 2024 could well be your year. I am seeing far more from businesses asking me to explain to them how we are able to prove the value of assistance so that they can understand truly what the return on investment is from every member of staff, because that's something they've been asked to do post-COVID. And they are really, as businesses, starting to understand that what it's actually about is you making sure that every dollar of their very expensive salaries is best spent. And so once they understand that and they understand the value, they're far more likely to make sure that there is proper structure, that you're in your own departments or functions as assistants, that you get that training budget that you need, and that you are treated like everybody else in the business. So I think it's very exciting. I'm seeing a shift. And so I would be excited about 2024 if I were you.
Bonnie.
I look ahead at 2024 and I'm immensely excited by it. And I think social media is a game changer. I hope everyone on this call is connecting and following Lucy Chamberlain, Lucy Brazier, and me. We all, and other people who you respect and admire, because we're all posting articles that are, you know, up to the minute information about what's happening. I mean, I know I see it as a goal, and I really don't think, I think I'm speaking for you, Lucy's, right? That you want that too, to give us up to the minute information. That's power. Knowledge is power. So please do follow us. In the chat, we didn't get to the whole work from home, you know, the hybrid, the remote, the conflict that leaders are really worried about having a fully remote workforce. And if that's the case in your company, it is about articulating what would be a better plan. They're afraid. So the question is, what are they afraid of? And they're afraid of disconnection, not being, you know, cutting edge enough. Find the fear, understand what they're afraid of, and respond to it with facts. That's what I want to leave you with. Let's do this, people.
Oof, that's hard to follow. Okay, what am I going to leave you with? One massive career tip is, if you can learn how to strategically manage change, that will be a game changer for your ability to add value in your role. My second one is, ask yourself, how can I be a better ally to this profession? How much of an ally are you being internally to other administrative staff in your business? And how are you doing that more broadly? Because collective action inspires change. And those are the two things I would leave you with today. And thank you, ladies. Thank you to everyone on the call. We will share all the links. Bonnie and Lucy's book, which is a must have. Buy it for your friends. And we will be back, definitely, because how could we not be? Because it's just one of my favorite things to do in the world.
Oh my gosh, thank you both so much. And the learning that is happening on the chat right now is mind-blowing. Like it's exponential. So cool.
Yeah, and email us if you have amazing tools or things you want to share with your fellow professionals. Email us and we'll include it all. We'll include it all so that you've got everything you could possibly wish for. All right. Okay. Have a great day. And
all right.
After yourself.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your last hour.
Thank you. See you
soon.
Okay, bye.